All right, to the business of winning and losing as it was across the weekends. Perhaps none more surprising than Melbourne, whose salvage mission turned into something of a transformation at the Gabba.
It certainly builds a lot of belief within your footy club. I think internally we know that we've been building, for the last 4 or 5 weeks. The boys have been unbelievable about just getting to work and getting better every day, and we're excited about the youth in terms of how we're starting to transition our team. And tonight's, a night where you start to get some reward and some belief, and I think our supporters can now see that it's starting to build. But we're also acutely aware that, that's one win, and we've still a lot of work to do and a lot of work to get better to be the team that we want to become.
I don't want to overplay it, but it was a pretty big win in terms of my career as well. Like,
a great win.
To win away, backs against the wall. Brisbane were coming off a draw in a game they would have liked to win, and they got up to a 30-point lead, just under, I think. And no Viney, no lever for us. I get every team has players out, but it's a pretty special win.
What did you see in your Ds?
Yeah, I'd imagine that was the emotion. I'd look back to the coach. I think when you get into a hole like they're in, there's only one way out, and that's you've got to coach your way out and play your way out. And I think he's done a really good job, Simon, of coaching his way out. You can sit on your hands or you can do something. So he made the really proactive move. Yeah, Fritsch got dropped, Van Rooyen got dropped back to the VFL. This is a forward line that was led by that man there, Jake Melksham, who was outstanding, Johnson and Petty with the keys. So all of a sudden, they go to Harris. Melksham goes to Harris, does a great job. McVee comes back, allows Rivers to go in the middle. Bowie's been sensational across half-back, probably would be leading the best and fairest, maybe behind Max. And you're led by a great captain. So I take my hat off to Simon Goodwin. I do. I think, if you want to go real deeper, the way they're playing is much more 2025 football than it has been historically. Their ball movement has sped up markedly, and they're taking the game on. And, there's all sorts of questions about Melbourne over the first 5 weeks about care and culture and all those sorts of issues. Well, the only way you fix that, Jerry, and we said at the time, is you play your way out of the hole. And then, they're not right out of it, but they've got a 4-6 record, and they've beaten the reigning premier on their home deck after being nearly, 5 goals behind. That's a big step out of it. But a lot of work still to be done. It was a good win. It was a really good win.
This is where the early season narrative fails, as it moves straight to Simon Goodwin under pressure for his job. But the pressure was to do the job, and as you've rightly pointed out, he has got busy doing the job in a different way. So he retools them. They're winning in a different way, and now potentially something to build into, and that's the captain and the coach together. They are so in it together. They live the hard times together, and then when they get their little moments of reward and nourishment, and it was worthy of a beer in the aftermath.
Yeah, Max Gawn spoke about the fact, on his radio show that they cracked the beer. So if that's what you want, if you can't sit down and have one, that photo there strikes me as being any footy club in Australia.
Yes, yeah.
At any time when you've had one of those wins where you're knackered, you just sit down, and if you want to have a beer, you have a beer and you enjoy each other's company. And that's, probably 10 minutes after that, they're in a meeting, and then, you're back on the plane recovering for the next day. But for that 10 minutes, Jared, that is the intangible for those, and I hate to say it, that haven't played at that, well, actually not at that level, who haven't played the game. There'll be suburban country footballers everywhere that are going, I get that. I know that feeling. They may have had 14 beers, the suburban and country boys. I reckon they might have had one, Melbourne, and got back into it. But, no, it's a good win. It was a good win.
Did you see, Brownie, the fact that the Melbourne Football Club rolled the Premiers, Brisbane Lions?
Well, look, they have won 4 or 5 now, 4 of their last 5. Now, I did the game at Gather Round against Essendon, and they were deplorable, so you thought they were a mile away. So it would have been unexpected. You said 5 weeks later they would have gone up and beaten Brisbane at the Gabba, obviously the reigning premiers. But if you actually look at the game, 2 or 3 times looked like Brisbane were going to run away with the Bucks, but Melbourne weren't playing that bad. They were hanging in there, and they just could get their game together, which they did in the back half. They were able to knock over the scoreboard and obviously thwart the Lions.
Well, they stuck to their guns, moving the ball off the angle a little bit, and their D50, the inside 50 stuff, their offence was improved and more consistently what we're looking for the new Melbourne rather than the down-the-line dour stuff. So we've seen that has... that is
the new Melbourne there. You can see round 0 to 5, no wins, and clearly a shift.
It doesn't happen flick of a switch. So we probably saw it about 4 to 5 weeks ago, the first time that we saw them really hit the scoreboard on the G against Freo, wasn't it? So they persisted with this, and other elements of their game started to come through.
Yeah,
also.
it did. I thought defensively really impressed you. So Brisbane cut teams to ribbons the last few years, really, with that uncontested mark game, the way they move it from back half. And that was on show again for the first 3 quarters, Bucks. But, geez, Brett, from halfway through that last quarter, Melbourne's ability to take away the uncontested marks here. Now, just see, clearly Brisbane don't want to go long because Hipwood otherwise would be down the line. Now, he's back at centre forward at this stage, so you don't want to be going long to Josh Dunkley. They were able to limit him to 20 uncontested marks in that last quarter, and about 6 or 8 of them come in one single play. So they were really on, and this was a huge part of their game in the last quarter, Bucks, in the turnaround.
Yeah, well, they had 9 front half turnovers in the first 3 quarters, Melbourne, and then they had 12 in the last to kick 3-3 from that source in the last quarter alone. So what Melbourne stopped Brisbane doing was being able to kick it around and take those uncontested marks. The reason that Hipwood was long was they'd already scored 6 goals, 4 from transition. And they'd scored 3 goals from stoppage from their back half. So you're expecting that you're going to be able to get through your back third and then go long. But this is what Melbourne forced Brisbane into, and they were able to really control the last 15 minutes of the game because of it. And what had turned from a really competitive performance, a really plucky performance from a Melbourne team that was a nuisance value to Brisbane, turned into a fantastic win.
Yeah, it really was.
Here's the obviously the barometer there and a potential game plan or a blueprint for opposition.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
this
teams have
isn't
tried
this
it.
year, Brandon. You see 2024, 2025. If you can take away their uncontested mark rate, you're one in obviously have a chance of beating them.
Yeah, they took 96 yesterday, so there you go. So that backs it up. And, it was really impressive. And I think Simon Goodwin said in the post-game, just starting to build a bit of belief.
Yeah, and I think that the thing watching the game, certainly in that fourth term, was the energy of the Melbourne players. And if you look at the way that they've spread the load, I think, over the last month in terms of their midfield minutes and the players that they've actually gone through there, where that comes to fruition is in the fourth term. So you look at, Petrarca plays 70% mid, but 100% in the final term. Rivers plays 85% mid, but 100% in the final term. So these players, with the ability to manage their minutes throughout the game, Clayton Oliver was a little bit different. He was a run-with role with Lachie Neale, who did a really good job. But the criticism of Melbourne is the number of players they've been flicking through that midfield, which means in the end of quarters, at the end of games, their energy has been zapped by that point. So I thought it was really good. Their energy was great to be able to cut down their uncontested marks on the back of rotating those midfielders.
Max Gawn was enormous in the last quarter. Took again.
The wall of Max.
Would he be the best last quarter player in the comp this year?
Well, he just puts himself in the right place, and I think certainly Melbourne have won games because of Max and Max's form. He's been fantastic again. I want to ask you about Clayton Oliver, and we spoke about this last week. Having a guy on $1.2 million doing a tagging role.
Don't worry about the money.
Played on Lachie Neale on the weekend. Jack Viney comes back this week. What happens?
Yeah, well, that will be the challenge because I think not only is it Clayton Oliver tagging, I think it's Trent Rivers who's been exposed to the midfield who offers them something different than what a Viney or a Clayton Oliver does. So I think, yes, the conversation revolves around Oliver. I don't think you can play the two of them in the middle at the same time. I think Trent Rivers needs more minutes exposed there. He's already shown and proved what he can do. I don't think you can then say Viney back in, Trent Rivers out. I think that would be a step back.
They're not just tagging in the midfield with Viney and Oliver now. There's someone else doing it in the forward half.
Well, I think this is the question that you have to ask when you come up against Brisbane. Do you have the facility or the player to tag a Lachie Neale, then an Ashcroft pops up, a Dunkley might be wrong, so then someone else pops up. So the ability to tag throughout their midfield is actually quite hard. Where I would be looking is certainly down in the defensive end, and that's where Melbourne went to. They had the right player in Jake Melksham, and he played on Harris Andrews and played him beautifully. So I think if you are a team coming up against Brisbane, this is the man that you need to sit on, and this is how you need to do it. So anyone who's watching, it's all about back shoulder. So it's all about trying to get Harris Andrews turning his head as many times as you possibly can, but being close enough if he wants to go up to the contest, you can still maintain body contact. So on that occasion, Melky probably had a little bit more time. So this is a centre bounce. So you can just see there Melky right on him when the contest comes in, maintaining that back space. So you've still got to make decisions as the play unfolds. Where is he? Is he dangerous? He makes a crucial decision right now. If he stays in front, Harris Andrews has got him where he needs to have him. Get back shoulder, even give yourself 5 to 10 metres. So once again, Harris has to keep checking where you are and not referencing the other.
It's not just back shoulder, it's directly in a line.
Blind spot.
Behind the ball, and Harris Andrews lined up, so that he has to take his eyes absolutely off the ball and loses any sort of spatial awareness of his positioning in line of ball to go and watch where Melksham is.
Yeah,
is
big
situated.
game this
So
week.
everyone has a blind spot. Harris Andrews would be his most vulnerable when he's in that particular position.